Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Bengal Tiger Podcast. I am Billy Embody. With me is Shea Dixon on this Monday, coming off a big LSU Junior Day, also Rankings Day, fresh on 300 in 2024. But we're going to jump into the reaction from Junior Day. And this was one that, look, sandwiched between kind of a good run of Junior Days and the spring game, Shea. This was one that quietly got some of their top targets on campus. Not a huge group by any means, but one where, let's lead off in Louisiana. You got two of the top prospects in Louisiana, two on 300 prospects in Denham Springs safety Deshaun McBride and Manny linebacker Tylen Singleton. Let's lead off with Deshaun McBride. I think he's somebody that LSU has done a really nice job recruiting since dishing out that offer earlier this spring. And he told me he's closing in on a decision. LSU looks like they're in good shape for this one.
Yes. Well, let me first start off by saying this. Does everything get to be called Junior Day now? It's not just juniors there, but do you remember, like, it felt like maybe just 2 years ago. I don't know. But before that, Junior Day was just like one day a year or maybe two. Now every weekend is Junior Day.
Now it's just a recruiting weekend, but the Junior Day tag to it has a little bit more oomph, I think, that keeps people coming back for more, maybe.
It's like when they changed the name of summer camp to elite camp.
Yeah. Well, LSU, the way they do it, usually is elite. So that was a long time coming.
All right. Yes, we're going to talk about Deshaun McBride actually a few times in this podcast. I get the feeling because he's on. I did the rundown as usual, Billy, and if we stick to it, we both will be mentioning his name a couple of times. This was a guy we both said they did not need to wait until summer camp to evaluate an offer. And here's why. You just see he's jumping into the On3 rankings. We'll talk about that in a bit, but he previously was not in the top 300. This is a top 15, 20 safety in the country. What is he? 18 on the industry rankings. In Louisiana right now, a top 5 player in Louisiana. I'll get into this more in the podcast in a bit. Guys, for me, like McBride and even Tylen Singleton to an extent, the Manny linebacker, another big kind of in-state name they had in for these guys are juniors, actually. So they're disproving my point on everything being called Junior Day. But I feel like for me, Billy, when I look at this class as a whole, these guys are must-gets. And Joel Rogers and Trades Green, and we can go into the list as we get into it in a bit of the higher ranked guys in the class, but they need, if they want a really good recruiting haul, better than average, better than good, they have to lock up Louisiana because right now that's their path to a firm top 10 class. And guys like Deshaun McBride, who, Billy, I don't know your opinion, maybe you could put him on commitment watch at this point. If you don't offer him now and you slow play it, it ends up like Jordan Matthews last year coming out of Woodlawn, where Tennessee or another school gives them all the love. You come in a little late. You try to play, hey, we're evaluating you, so on and so forth. And ultimately, you wish you would have taken him. You only signed one true cornerback, and he signs with Tennessee. Don't get yourself into that position. I love the offer to that was only about a month ago. They offered Deshaun McBride. So get him back to campus. Again, I like where it's trending. I believe look at the On3 RPM right there, Billy, nearly 100% to LSU. I would agree with that at this stage.
Yeah, I think it's fair to put him on commit watch. I mean, when he told me that a decision is coming soon, that tells me that it probably is coming soon. Now, he hasn't set any official visits yet, and that's worth noting as well because, he's one of those guys that you and I have talked about on the pod. You look at those players who maybe haven't set those officials, that could be because they're nearing a decision and maybe they aren't going to take really any official visits. They're going to take their official visit to where they commit. That doesn't just apply to Deshaun McBride. I think there's a chance we see him make his decision before the summer because when I asked him straight up, when would you like a decision? He said soon. And to me, that doesn't necessarily mean taking it into June and taking those official visits and then making a decision in July. If he does, I still feel good about where LSU stands. They're battling Tennessee. They're battling Ole Miss. But I agree with you. This is a guy that has put down a respectable track time in the 100-meter. He's been productive on the field as a junior. So for them to offer him when they did, it was the right move. He's got that size to grow into a linebacker potentially, or he could stay at safety. So I like where LSU stands with Deshaun McBride and, Brian Kelly, Kerry Cooks, Joe Sloan, Jordan Arsma, a bunch of, the staff has really done a nice job prioritizing him early.
6'3", 200 is a big kid for a junior in high school playing defensive back. So college ready size type guy. Like you said, can add more weight, will add more weight, but the more you look at Deshaun McBride, you mentioned the track stuff this spring, the more you have to like him. No brainer take for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same way I view Tylen Singleton, the Manny linebacker who jumped back in to the on 300. Now, granted, we've had debate over this in terms of, us probably liking him a little bit more than the rankings team did earlier this spring. They, dove in a little bit deeper into him and liked him enough to move him back into that on 300. He was back on campus for the first time in a minute now. This could be a situation where now LSU gets him back on campus. He said he had a great time. That's big for him because programs like Arkansas, A&M, Tennessee, and others have hosted him. TCU have hosted him this spring. Now LSU finally got him back on campus. This is maybe their opportunity to make that move back up in his recruitment and secure an official visit and then go from there.
Yeah, I think that's still what it's going to take is a good official visit weekend with his family. But I think they were in on Thursday even maybe, but Friday, Singleton and some of his family were there. I saw you shared some photos hanging out with Matt House, Brian Kelly, and that's what you want. You got to keep him around campus. He had a couple of visits scheduled and then rescheduled them. So as you noted, he finally makes it back to campus again. They need linebackers in this class. He's one of the best, if not the best, Louisiana has to offer, kind of at the spot, obviously, at least in terms of the rankings right now. And they haven't hit on a Manny kid in a while. And this would be a nice one to reel into the class. I do feel like with a guy like this, and this happens often in Louisiana, you're recruiting against Arkansas and TCU. And while you may say, well, we're LSU, we should be able to easily beat them for a recruit, especially in Louisiana. What TCU and Arkansas have pitched and then successfully come through with is those guys go there and they'll play for 4 years or 3 years. They'll get in early. They will be seeing early reps. We're seeing it right now. Jonathan Bax at TCU is running first team in spring football, a guy we talked about a ton in last year's cycle coming out of New Orleans. So I still think teams like that are a threat here. I'm not ready to say like, oh, he's no doubt going to end up at LSU, but I do agree that LSU is the team to beat.
Yeah, he's one that we're going to have to continue to monitor. And look, I mean, you're battling years of LSU not really being able to secure a guy from Manny. They had AJ Carter for a cup of coffee before he flipped back and went elsewhere. Myron Warren, they didn't end up offering. Tackett Curtis, they could never get that footing with. So this is a big prospect to make a statement as far as LSU in Manny, because they do have a guy every now and again, it seems like now, especially relatively more consistent, I would say, than since I started covering the beat, where they're a high-level FBS prospect that when they're in your backyard, you want to land. I do think Matt House is very impressive when he gets in front of these kids. And I think that's something to at least hold on to if you're an LSU fan when you're following this recruitment. Even Tackett Curtis, who didn't end up giving LSU the time of day that they would have liked, Tackett Curtis did say, like, Matt House is impressive. He was a guy that, recruited him hard until, the writing was on the wall and he was going out of state. But, Matt House does a really nice job recruiting. He's kind of underrated. He does a good job of evaluating prospects early. We saw that with Whit Weeks. We saw that with them assessing Christian Brathwaite after his toward the end of his senior year. Now they're on Tylen Singleton early. They've had him on campus multiple times. This isn't going to be for lack of trying when it comes to Tylen Singleton.
No, I don't think they'll be caught. I won't hit them this cycle at all. I don't ever feel with lack of trying in Louisiana, because it's kind of guys who we've talked about: Joel Rogers, Deshaun McBride, Aaron Burrell, the kicker. Like, there were guys that they could have waited to offer and maybe still gotten and evaluated further, but they made the move to offer now, and I think they'll ultimately get them. And had they waited to offer and not gotten him, it would have stung. So I don't think I'll be at any point in this process hitting LSU at the lack of effort in Louisiana on getting in on guys and making their presence felt.
Yeah, another high school you could kind of, chalk that one up in the same boat as the Duncanville High School pipeline LSU was trying to establish. They have some of the best prospects in the country year in, year out. One of them, who just made a move in the On300, is Caden Durham, now a top 100 prospect. According to On3, he's been one of the top track athletes in the entire country. Really, really productive for that state championship team last year. LSU had him on campus as well as two of his teammates over the weekend. He's somebody that, if you're looking at this one, don't be surprised if LSU can land a commitment, but they're also battling Oklahoma, who's been recruiting him for a while as well. This was another good step in the right direction for LSU in what is shaping up to be a battle of future SEC foes.
I don't even know if you need to get into the pipeline. You just need like a barrel of oil. Just give me one guy off of this Duncanville team that's stacked. We talked about this in the last recruiting pod. I think however many big time prospects, it was almost double digit, probably FBS guys. But Caden Durham, well, again, we can note him that now. He moved up in the On3 rankings. You can see there if you're watching on YouTube, he's now a top 100 guy. On3 higher than on him than any of the other services at the moment. Number 11 running back, number 10 running back on the industry rankings. So a good collective feel that this is one of the best 10, 12 running backs out there, puts him as around of a top 100, 150 prospect, and remains for me the only guy LSU is going after at running back in this class, because at least hard at this moment, because they know what's ahead in 2025. Tons of talent in state in Louisiana at running back. They've got a deep running back room right now. They just signed 2 running backs out of Louisiana that they're bringing to the roster this offseason. You've got the portal if you ever need it. For me, it's Caden Durham or bust, and I'm completely okay with that. I'm not sure what the weekend's visit truly did in terms of swinging things. I think if you really want to beat Oklahoma, it's going to be a family affair there, and that means an official visit weekend that goes very well, which hasn't happened yet. He hadn't scheduled one.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as he gets closer to, if he is one of those prospects, and he keeps things very close to the vest. I mean, I'll be going out to Duncanville once spring practice starts for them to really sit down with him a little bit more. But one of those guys that hasn't publicly said anything about official visits yet. So could he be one that, as spring wraps up and programs come through Duncanville and he gets a better idea of, LSU, Oklahoma, how bad they truly want him, which I think both programs do. Maybe he doesn't take it to the summer, but it's kind of an unknown with him. And somewhat of the same respect, you can say that with Kadavian Dotson-Walker, the safety at Duncanville. He was back on campus for another visit. He's been in for games. He's taken multiple visits to LSU before. He's somebody that has taken a ton of visits this spring. I mean, he's been all over the place visiting programs, and he had an early prediction in. A lot of these Duncanville guys did have early predictions in to land at LSU. This one is getting to be a little bit more of a battle, obviously, since then. He is one of the top safeties in the country. He's sitting as a 4-star non-on300 guy, just outside of the top 247 for 24/7. But that makes him still one of the best prospects in the country and one of the best safeties LSU's after.
I think this is going to be an interesting question because they have a safety committed in Maurice Williams, who is a 4-star, top 300 guy, and has been solid with his commitment out of Texas. Then they've got 2 in-state guys in Deshaun McBride and Joel Rogers at safety they just offered. If they get both, you're at 3 safeties, if I'm not mistaken, and there are other safeties still on the board. And there's guys, I'll touch on this more in some tidbits on the board this week, some corners that they're recruiting as corners and safeties. So I don't think they would say no to Dotson-Walker. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just more curious how this safety room really fills out, because if you get the 2 in-state guys you've offered, that's 3 right there. And maybe they want to take more than that. Maybe they're at 4, but stretching it beyond that would be a lot of safeties in a class, even if it's a big position of need.
I agree. And you get into the thought that numbers usually work out. They work themselves out. Players go where they're, kind of meant to go in a sense. And sometimes they always take care of themselves, because LSU is on a lot of safeties, like you mentioned. And you're going to look back on this recruiting class if it goes the way LSU wants it. And you're going to say, well, wish you could have gotten one more of the guys you were after. But if you come away with 4 really quality safeties, which if they hit on, a group of, on top of Maurice Williams, if they hit on a group of McBride, Joel Rogers, and then somebody else, that's a really, really good haul. And yeah, you'd love to be able to take more, but in the end, it's going to all work out if it goes the right way.
Yeah, and there's guys who we're seeing it now. There were safeties they signed that are playing corner, playing nickel, corners playing safety, corners or safeties having to play nickel, which we don't rank that position. So there is ways to kind of get around it and, shuffle guys with versatility into different spots. I would bet they take 4 safeties. That's my guess.
I agree. I think the way they're recruiting that position, it backs that up. They're not letting up on a lot of the top safeties on their board. They're wanting them to come back. It wouldn't shock me if we saw more guys on the board come back for the spring game. It wouldn't shock me if we saw more official visits. Kerry Cooks does a really nice job of blanketing his area when it comes to recruiting that position and getting them in good with a lot of safety prospects. We'll see if they can obviously come away with the guys that they want. I will note, Shea, on the rundown, it said Duncanville pair, but really this trio that was on campus with DeCorian Moore, the 2025 4-star elite wide receiver prospect. He's somebody that enjoyed himself in Baton Rouge as well. And, the Tigers are going to be swinging big there because he is, I've seen him a couple times. He's just terrific.
I already said I was not acknowledging any non-juniors on my junior day visitor weekend recap. Even though I did put one on there.
Yeah, you're going to break that here in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, this kid's pretty good, huh? Have you seen him in person?
Yes, real smooth. I think he's somebody that would be instant impact type player out of the slot. 5'11", 175. He's been clocking some of the top 100-meter times in the country as well. I think he runs on Duncanville's 4x1 team, which is always one of the state's best as well. So he can really, really roll. And he's going to be somebody that I think LSU fans should get to know because he's going to be one of the top receivers on the board for the next really 2 years.
Yeah, that'll make him tough to get out of Texas. I see SMU lurking over there.
They've hosted him a couple of times, but they're going to get him if he goes somewhere and then doesn't necessarily like it.
Bounce back. That's what the portal's all about. All right, so we're filing him away. DeCorian Moore for next year.
Now, this is a prospect, Shea, that I think LSU made a move on. Waco Connolly, cornerback, Kobe Black. I do think he's going to be a tough land, but I think the way LSU set up his visit, he really felt the love in Baton Rouge. Again, a guy who's relatively quiet. I'm going to have to make a spring practice trip out there to Waco, and maybe I'll bump into some former LSU staffers on the Baylor staff. But Kobe Black is a guy that I think really enjoyed himself. I think LSU is right in the mix now for an official visit, and I bet you he schedules one and gets back. I think they're top 3 or 4 in his recruitment now.
Okay, these are the kind of kids, and you'll see on his On3 RPM, again, if you're watching on YouTube, we hit you with the live stuff updates there. Oklahoma State in the lead. I believe his brother plays at Oklahoma State, so that's going to be based off visits. He probably went to every game this past season. But you see A&M, Texas hanging around Baylor. He's a Waco kid. Out-of-state teams, LSU, Bama, I think Georgia. He recently talked up a number of really high-profile SEC schools, the schools he had visited and was going to visit, LSU being one of them. I feel like, and maybe it's something you said in there too, but I'd already known this and thought this about the recruitment, but it furthered my belief in what I'm saying from last week. And this was right before Kobe Black got to campus. I talked to some people around the program, and they felt like this was a guy, and again, the number 3 corner in the country on the On3 industry rankings, that they could go into Texas and not just battle the in-state teams for, but battle the Bamas and the Georgias because of what you said, Billy. He's a kid who's quiet, keeps to himself, isn't making it a big NIL, social media, any of that. It's just kind of a pretty straightforward approach to football and his recruitment. His dad played college at where at Kansas State, I believe. Oh, yeah, there you go. Right there. Dad was roommates with Michael Bishop, throwback there, legendary Kansas State quarterback. But dad played, brother plays. Families like that know what the process is like. They know how to weigh pros and cons of schools. And they know also, if you have an NFL aspirations, that programs like LSU and Bama and others can obviously set you up for that. But LSU's been very good with DBs, across really the past decade plus. So I will go for now as a maybe here. I think this is someone that, like, I can look at a lot of kids in Texas that they've offered, and I'll be like, they're never getting that kid. I don't necessarily think that about Kobe Black right now. I don't think they're leading, but I don't think they're out of it.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go away in this recruitment. I think that's why this visit this past weekend was big. Robert Steeples is making him a huge priority. When you look at the corners they're after, you can make the case that Kobe Black is the number one target for the staff at the corner position. And I mean, it makes sense. I mean, everything he does on the field, basketball, track, I mean, everything matches up with a bona fide 5-star. I mean, he is a 5-star on the On3 industry ranking. Could certainly finish one for On3 as well. But I think they did a really nice job laying things out. I think he has, like you said, that good understanding of what priorities need to be when making a decision. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to come to LSU for sure, but they're right in the mix now for him. And I think that's a good step for a kid who, has taken visits. He's made his way around, and I'm intrigued to see what his top 5 and official visit lineup is going to be, because I bet you he takes kind of a loaded summer of trips and then makes a decision before his senior season. I think LSU is going to be one of those schools that gets an official, and I think that's all you can ask for right now.
I love that at the bottom of his kind of breakdown on his On3 profile on his personal life, he loves Doritos, playing video games like Fortnite, and listening to NBA YoungBoy. I feel like maybe that's just a stock thing they put in there for every 16 and 17-year-old, and then maybe they just don't even change it. Like, that just sums up what I would imagine every kid in high school is doing with their free time.
Maybe he's already positioning for a Doritos NIL deal, and he requested that specifically be put on his profile.
That'd be smart. Now you're thinking ahead of the game.
Yeah. Speaking of ahead of the game, LSU did host one of the top sophomore defensive backs in the country, a rising junior. So you could say he is a junior, soon to be at least. In Houston North Shore, defensive back Devin Sanchez. He's top 25 prospect on On3. He's the number one player in Texas on the On3 industry ranking. LSU got him to campus for the first time, and I think it's going to be the first of many trips. I think he comes back this summer. Wouldn't shock me if we saw him camp. He's got a ton going for him. One of the better just athletes at the position in his class. And from what he told me, he really enjoyed himself again. So LSU's doing a really nice job on these visits.
Yeah, I like to see him get involved with elite DBs too, which they're kind of on a run of here. I will note Devin Sanchez is the number 23 overall prospect in next year's class on On3, which would put him in 5-star range, and number 2 player in Texas, which is rarefied air. You're a very, very, very excellent football recruit, if you're even in the top 5 in Texas, let alone debuting as number 2. But he's ranked as the number 3 corner. Jabari Antoine over at Westgate in Louisiana and New Iberia is ranked as the number 2 corner. I get this. I mean, Sanchez, I got the drift, and we can look beyond Antoine for a moment, is the top corner on their wish list, outside of Louisiana. So, yes, I agree with you. This is a name we will continue to hear a good bit about. And they have a North Shore corner on their team right now, if that helps at all.
Yeah.
Denver Harris.
Yeah, Denver Harris, obviously one of the top prospects to ever come through North Shore, which is saying something. Devin Sanchez seems to be poised to be that next guy up. It's going to be a battle for him, no question, a guy that highly ranked, but LSU trying to get that Houston pipeline reestablished, a big area for the school overall, and Devin Sanchez would be a huge piece to that going forward. So with that, we do have a new commitment date to monitor, and that is Charleston Collins, the 4-star defensive lineman, who announced that he's going to be making his decision this week. Hey, this is bad timing for LSU. They don't have a defensive line coach. He's fresh off of a visit to Arkansas, and he announced his LSU is a finalist. Auburn, Georgia, a couple others are in there, but he's going to be committing on Friday. So this is one where we've had our picks in on LSU. He's been a guy that has been linked to LSU multiple times. He's made plenty of visits, but this is just not good timing for LSU. This seems like one that's going to go the Hogs' way.
Yeah, it's an Arkansas kid too, and his teammates announcing the same day, and he's got a heavy presence on Arkansas in terms of the On3 RPM. Here's the simplest way to break this one down. We were banking Arkansas may well have led the whole time, Billy, but we were banking that Jamar Cain had done a really good job of keeping Charleston Collins around campus, getting to know his family. And Charleston said nothing but great things about LSU. He visited LSU as much as he did Arkansas almost, and was down for games, summer camp, junior day visits, whatever it might be. He was there. So you felt like, man, year one, that first year of recruiting Charleston Collins, they did great. How can they close it from there? Right at that time that you're hitting that full year, Jamar Cain leaves. And now you've got a month plus window here where they have not had a D-line coach. Now, I'm not going to doubt Brian Kelly. Your program's not going to fall apart if you don't have a D-line coach for a month to recruit. I get it. Hire the right guy. Everything else will fall into line. You may get, the hope is it pays off and you get a lot of big D-line guys in your class because of a good defensive line hire. But smart by Arkansas here because they knew, hey, LSU probably is the biggest threat here. Let's go all in right now. They don't have a D-line coach. Let's get it done this spring. And that appears to be what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's one of those that you can't get too upset about in a sense if you're an LSU fan. The timing just doesn't work out, and now he's going to make this decision. And I mean, I'm really high on Charleston Collins. He's a great kid, top 150, top 125 overall prospect on On3. He's gone everywhere and competed. He does 7-on-7. He's gone to earn the MVP at the Under Armour Dallas camp on the defensive line. He earned his offer at LSU when Jamar Cain was there and battled, and it was pretty clear cut. He was one of the best players to come through LSU's camp last summer. But this is just going to be a guy that you're going to have to try to swing away on once you get a new defensive line coach. He's nearby. He's in your region. Obviously, he's an in-state player for Arkansas, but you can't give up. And maybe LSU gets him back on campus once they get this new D-line coach hired.
Yeah, we'll see if that doesn't come to fruition, but it will. I think it will be tough because he's an in-state kid, as you noted. Once an in-state kid commits to an in-state program, especially like a Texas kid committing to an in-state program, doesn't hold as much weight to me as a Louisiana kid committing to LSU, an Arkansas kid committing to Arkansas, because that is the only option in the state. And then that's where that sort of like state pride of everyone staying home to play for the Tigers or Razorbacks kind of kicks in. So makes it a little bit more tough.
Yep. And for LSU fans now, a new thing to monitor. The transfer portal window did open on Saturday. It runs until April 30th. And LSU did have a player enter the portal, but it was one that was expected. No other Tigers have entered the portal just yet as of the recording of this podcast. Michael Doherty, the 2023 signee who enrolled early, left the team pretty quickly, did formally enter his name in the portal. So we're 72 hours or so into the portal window. And right now, LSU is, sitting pretty in a sense.
Yeah, I think last time I had them in the spring. Okay, this would be at least for the window that occurred, the 45-day window in December and January, which we're in two portal windows nowadays. The first portal window, which is the very active one, then this one after spring ball, or at least towards the end of most people's spring practices, that will be not as heavy in terms of guys going in. LSU had 17 guys enter the portal in the first window. Right now, they've only had one, and Doherty announced he was entering in February and hasn't even been with the team since then. So this is a win for LSU. And really, the guys who were like Nussmeier, I think people are going to be monitoring. I don't think Nussmeier is going anywhere. We were really watching the veteran offensive linemen who weren't starters last year, and the one name was Marlon Martinez, who I knew that every backup, like the second team on the line last year, everyone transferred out except Marlon Martinez. And I met with Marlon Martinez when we were with media after practice on Saturday. So this was like, the day the portal opened. And I asked him if he planned to enter or what his thought was. And he said that in the offseason he did, but he pointed out every O-lineman he signed with at LSU hit the portal. So he was like, I am the last one. And I wanted to prove to myself that I could stay, that I could compete. He's getting first team reps all spring with Charles Turner out. He said, look, Charles Turner is one of my best friends, but I want to win this job. If it's not this, I want to win a job as a guard maybe. He's versatile, but O-line, they're going to play more than 5 O-linemen. Guys get hurt, guys don't play well, whatever it might be. Marlon Martinez will play a good bit of football for him this year, if not be a full-time starter. So I think at this point, if you're LSU right now, you're happy because it's more good news than any negative. You've got guys who are staying.
Yeah, and that's what you want. And who knows? This is just that crazy time of year. There's surprises around the country in a sense that enter. We saw Georgia defensive lineman Barry Alexander, who played in the national championship game. Really impressed. He highly touted recruit. He enters the portal. It happens, but right now, I think with where Brian Kelly has the program, you got to feel good about where things stand with this roster and the guys sticking around. I mean, there was a window earlier, around January that numerous guys could have jumped in, but I don't think spring ball is going to change too much for anybody still on the roster.
Especially if they weren't not hurt or if they were healthy, because you were starting all spring or you were in the second team because they didn't have enough players to fill out. Like the spring game, I think is just offense versus defense for a little while. They can't even fill out 2 teams right now with all the guys they've got sidelined or waiting to get to campus or whatever it might be. So yeah, unless like there was no big wave of guys, obviously. The only one person entered and we knew he was entering. He's not even on the team anymore, and Michael Doherty. But there wasn't, like, it's been 48 hours now. There hasn't been some big wave of kids who are like, I was just waiting for the window to open. I'm in and I'm leaving. We also aren't done with spring ball. So I don't know if maybe there is a kid or two out there on the team who's like, hey, I'm just going to get through spring ball, then I'm going to enter my name. But it is only a 14-day window. So they'll only have about a week after spring ball ends to make their decision. If there's anyone, I don't think it'll be anyone of real note. I think they're done in terms of the portal departures. I think we'll see if they add any more, if there's any talent in there to add, but done with the departures, at least of note for me.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, I may be a surprise, but I haven't heard anything to really feel that way that just yet that it's going to happen. So we'll continue to monitor it on the BengalTiger.com, and be sure to subscribe to the BengalTiger.com. Keep hitting that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Over 3,500 of you guys now subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to have a spring game special, so be on the lookout to subscribe to the BengalTiger.com when that special comes out as well. You can also get your free Founders Club hat when you subscribe as well. So be on the lookout for that. Lots and lots of recruiting news as spring wraps up and we start to look toward that summer of official visitors rolling in. It'll stack up pretty quickly before we know it. So, Shea, one of my favorite days, but a pretty quiet one, was Monday. Rankings were updated on On3. The new On300 was out. Some high school moves made with track season 7-on-7, some camps, some big risers in there as well, including a pair of Louisiana prospects jumping back in. We talked about them earlier. Deshaun McBride and Tylen Singleton jumping into and up the On300. This is a group in Louisiana that I think we have pretty well ranked right now. I could, make the case and have before that Tylen Singleton should be up there higher. I think Kalaj Cobbin should be an On300 guy. But overall, this was a pretty good day for LSU fans and specifically in Louisiana with the guys that landed in the latest round of On300 rankings.
Yeah, and I'll put some perspective to this. Louisiana right now has 6 guys in the top 300, and that's not a lot, but we're also not anywhere close to being done with the evaluation process. Guys still have the rest of spring, summer camps, senior seasons. So there's a lot of time for other guys to emerge for me into the top group. I don't think anyone's going to be really dropping out of that top 300. So my prediction as we stand right now, I think give me 10. I think there'll be 10 Louisiana guys. I think they'll hit that magic double-digit number in the On3 top 300. Now, right now, or I should say a year ago, Billy, they had a top 5 class, and only 6 of the guys, again, from Louisiana were in the top 300 on On3. So you can be on this pace right now with Louisiana having a lower number than you would expect in that group. But I think it grows if they do a good job locking up Louisiana. I think that's what pushes them towards a higher position than they are ranked right now, which I believe is 11 nationally. You obviously would really like to be in the top 10, preferably top 5. They did that in Brian Kelly's first year. I also think, I don't think you have the link pulled up, Billy, but I'll just say what it is. If you go on3 now to the NFL draft by stars, and then it breaks down 5 stars who got drafted, 4 stars, 3 stars, and guys from different states. And in the past 5 NFL drafts, the draft to talent ratio in Louisiana is not only number 1 in the country, it's way out in front of being number 1. 56 guys drafted. Unbelievable number for a state that we know has talent and continues to, let's see, Billy, click the go to the draft thing, top right. Yeah, there. Go maybe the draft by stars right there. There you go. Okay, now click that draft talent ratio percentage. Or if you're on YouTube, you're paying attention here. All right, there you go. So these are the past 5 drafts, and you see Louisiana well in front. You might even have the past 3 drafts. I don't know if you scroll to the top and look, but it really doesn't matter. It's all the same. Louisiana is firmly out in front. So drives home my point. Recruit Louisiana. Evaluate Louisiana. I think by the end of this, the On3 top 300, there'll be 9 or 10 guys in that top 300. Get all of those guys committed, because while they only landed 6 of the top 300 last year, it was well into double digits. They just didn't get Arch Manning or Eli Holstein or Tackett Curtis or Jaden Osbury or Derek Williams, because it was year 1 and they were behind on those guys. You don't have that excuse this year, and not excuse. You don't have to face that reality this year. And because of that, I think that LSU should be able to hit double-digit commitments from Louisiana. A number of those guys will be highly ranked. And if you're doing it right, your evaluations on the high 3 stars pay off for you. Foster Moreau, Lloyd Cushenberry, Russell Gage. There's been plenty of guys who have kind of been non-top 300, high 3 stars, low 4 stars that end up being really key pieces. And it's because you evaluated Louisiana correctly. That draft to talent ratio tells me everything I need to know. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida are the top 5 teams. Toss in Texas, that's all LSU needs to be recruiting in my mind.
Yeah, completely agree. And shout out Foster Moreau. And he announced that he got good news on his cancer diagnosis, and it sounds like they're going to be able to get it all. So he should be back on the NFL field at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But saw that good news on Twitter over the weekend on Foster, a guy who went on to have a terrific LSU career. One of the good guys and fun guys to interview, and hopefully we can have him on. Maybe we'll do like a more low-key podcast, maybe have a beer with him or something somewhere, because he is a lot of fun. But anyway, I agree with you. Louisiana, I think, and we were asked this on the message board today, do we see more commitments coming in the On300? And I say yes. I mean, you look at the group that is the top players in Louisiana, and the On3 RPM sitting pretty for LSU for the top 6 guys in the state. Obviously, Jawan Johnson, who just dropped out of the On300, is committed to Colorado. He's the state's 7th ranked prospect. But if you look at this top 6, I would feel good, like really solid about Wardell Mack, about Trey'Dez Green, Joel Rogers, Deshaun McBride, and that middle 4 of the 6. I think LSU's firmly in the lead on those guys.
Yeah, and the number 1 player, Dominic McKinley, is going to be recruited by everybody. Bama's all over him. A&M's in the mix. LSU's obviously recruiting him heavily. And look, it could be one of those things where it gets back to the norm, and a kid from the Lafayette area doesn't leave the state and just goes to LSU, like most kids from the Lafayette area have over the past couple of decades of LSU being successful in football and kids staying home. So we'll see. It's a big position of need. Obviously, D-line can really change the game for you. He's a 5-star on the On3 industry rankings. And down at 6, like you said, Talon Singleton. There'll be other guys that move around. They're in such a better position this year to sweep that top 10 than they were, or, clean up in the top 10 than they were a year ago in Louisiana. And everyone I had mentioned previously, I think, was in that top 10 that they didn't get and left the state. So I like where they're at.
Yeah,
you want to see these guys commit, but I like where they're at.
Yeah, I do too. And Dominic McKinley and Juwan Johnson were both on campus last week. So LSU is getting them back to Baton Rouge and over there for some more time with the staff, which is important. During spring ball, all these guys that we're talking about in the on 300 for Louisiana and Louisiana prospects as well, they're just a short drive for the most part to Baton Rouge. So it's good to see the staff getting them on campus. Shea, LSU does have one commit of their 12 in the On3 top 100. We kind of talked about that in a sense of LSU being able to make a move with more on 300 prospects. We mentioned the guys from Louisiana. There's some highly touted guys out there that LSU's after. We talked about the Caden Durham, the Kadavian Dodds Walker, Kobe Black, guys like that they're in it for. Who are some of the guys that are in the on 300 that you think LSU can make a splash for?
Okay, don't click off anything. Look at that page right there in front of you. That's the key, because a year ago, when they finished with the top 5 class, they had 13 players from the On3 top 300 signed with LSU. So 13 of the 25, about half the class was in the On3 top 300. Ultimately 24. Michael Doherty enters the portal before he ever really does anything. So half the class is top 300 members. Right now, what do they have, Billy? 11, 12 commits? And they have
12 commits.
12. They have one. And that's Maurice Williams. He's an out-of-state kid. Am I pressing the panic button? No. And here's why. Of the current commits, I won't be surprised if a couple of the out-of-state kids don't sign with them. And that won't be the end of the world if one or two of them don't. And I think that will be because they end up replacing them with maybe better players. They've also done well to already clean up the back end. And what I mean by that in Louisiana, like they got a kicker out of Louisiana, Aaron Burrell. They got Ahmad Bro, who was on one of the best defenses in the state up at Ruston, committed. He's a high 3-star. They've got, gosh, who am I missing here? What other? Kyrie Lee, an offensive lineman, one of the better offensive linemen in the state, already committed. Wallace Foster, one of the better DBs coming out of South Louisiana, is already committed. You just want to be able to finish with that top group. And I like to make it simple because I just like to stick to the math here. If 13 top 300 guys a year ago could get you a top 5 class, and only 6 of them were from Louisiana, that group right there that you're looking at on the screen can make up that 6. There'll be more than that. Like I said, I think they'll get 10 guys from Louisiana who are probably in that top 300. That takes off a good amount of pressure, Billy, for me, of going out of state to carry the bulk of your class. And then you can go out of state to hit on the Deshaun Womack, hit on the Harold Perkins, hit on the, really elite Whit Weeks, top 100, top 150 type range guys. My issue right now is this, Billy. Colin Simmons, and I'm looking down the On3 top 300 right now. I did it before we started. And look, these rankings are not the end-all be-all, and it's not what it'll look like at the end. But rankings do matter to an extent. They can tell you how much talent you're really bringing in. If I'm looking at the entire top 300 and taking those Louisiana guys out, there are only 1, 2, 3 guys in the country. And 2 of them go to the same school. Colin Simmons, an edge, obviously 5-star out of Duncanville. His teammate, a running back, Caden Durham, a top 100 player we've talked about a few times already on the pod. And then Draylon Miller, a guy that they're going to have to beat out A&M for, but a wide receiver, a top 30 wide receiver. Those are the only 3 guys from out of state in the On3 top 300 where LSU is in the top 2 on the On3 RPM. Does that mean everything? No, not at all. What it tells me, though, is they're going to have to battle out of state if they really want to hit on elite guys, or some of these evals that they're doing now. I point to Whit Weeks a year ago. They better be very solid evals, because then when you look up a year later, oh, wait, you were on that kid before his senior year when he really blew up and became a top 100 player and one of the best linebackers in America. It's because you did your homework and you did your evals. I trust that they can do solid evals here. I'm just very curious how it plays out, because I love how it's setting up in state. I'm not sure how it's setting up out of state.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm right there with you. And one thing, and a good reason to subscribe to BengalTiger.com, we give the context behind things, right? You look at that list and you say, all right, LSU not leading on the RPM for a majority of those guys in the on 300 out of state. But a guy that I want to circle, and you mentioned Draylon Miller, who's out of Silsbee, Texas, but a guy right down the road, Weston Davis, from Beaumont United. You look at that On3 RPM right now, and it's factoring in an Alabama official visit set for this summer. Well, just kind of pull you behind the curtain a little bit. LSU is one of those schools that's going to ultimately get an official visit. Texas A&M, same story with them. I think right now, looking at it, it's an LSU A&M battle with Bama right there too. So the On3 RPM, as visits get set, and this is that critical period of time where you see visits get set for the summer, it will start to fluctuate. And a guy like Weston Davis, who LSU was on early, we've talked about him before, top 25 prospect on On3, number 3 offensive tackle in the country. He would be a terrific land, and a guy that maybe the On3 RPM doesn't necessarily tell the story as much as where the recruitment maybe really stands in a sense.
When I look at, if I need, again, let me play the numbers here. If I need them to go hit on 5 or 6 high profile out-of-state guys, 7 that are ranked high, that are very, highly regarded and come in and really give you something, and it's not a project, I will bank on Brad Davis. Brings you a lot there because he's already proven it. He's gone outside the state in multiple classes and reeled in very elite prospects while also locking down Louisiana. So I won't count Brad. I think this is a great, guys like this are good examples because I think Brad Davis can eval well. He closes well. He got DJ Chester a year ago. That's one spot where I feel like they can start to make a little bit of splash at.
Yeah, and I think it's a prime example of a guy that, if you're LSU and you're recruiting at an elite level, and especially kind of looking out of state, and the way LSU has prioritized states like Georgia, states like Texas, you look at CJ Jackson out of Tucker, for example, a top 100 prospect on On3 at a position of need, an edge. Those are the types of guys that you'd like to see them land here and there, while supplemented by doing extremely well in Louisiana. Weston Davis would be an example of that. Draylon Miller, you mentioned the Duncanville kids, any of those guys, those would be good examples of what you want to see out of LSU. Obviously, it can be tough to sometimes go into Texas in certain areas and certain schools and land and pull some of those guys out of there. But that's where you want to see it sprinkled in when there is a Louisiana base of the class that's going to, again, like you said, kind of take some of that pressure off.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if we bled into that one right there, but the last question on the rundown is, which position did we think LSU can make a splash at with some highly ranked guys? I think if I'm just looking at that list that we just talked through for the past 47 minutes of guys, it's DB. I think that is the spot where you look at Kobe Black was just on campus. He's a 5-star level corner. But then you've got already a top 200 safety committed, and guys like Wardell Mack, a 5-star range corner out of Louisiana right now, Joel Rogers and Deshaun McBride, who could make up potentially half your safety class as top 200 players, 4 stars. And there are a number of others out there at corner and safety. So I will go DB because I just think, 2, safety's a real position of need. And the more I talk about that, the more I think they should probably take 4 guys. And corner's a real position of need. And yes, they got a big DB class last year. Yes, some of those guys can play corner, but they're also going now in Brian Kelly's first year and second year of probably starting all transfers at corner. And they had to do it in year 1. I said it then, it was a multi-year rebuild. You had to do it again in year 2. You do not want to continue that theme. So maybe look, Toviano and Jeremiah Hughes and Stamps and all these guys they signed last class, they may all hit. They may be very good. I'd feel a lot better about it if you did that twice in a row, because then I have a lot more options of guys who ultimately can hit. I want them to take another big DB class. I'd like it to be evenly split between corners and safeties. And I also think it's one that sets up to where they actually can get some highly ranked guys.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the only other position that I think LSU could end up coming away with a really solid haul, probably offensive line or wide receiver. I mean, I think just betting on, Brad Davis, what he's been able to do, and also Cortez Hankton. He's got some good chops on the recruiting front too now after, reeling in a Jaylen Brown and holding off at Texas for Kyle Parker. I mean, he's done a nice job too. So I kind of, and I think a lot of people on the board that follow me will, see that I pay attention to the position coaches and the job they're doing. And I think at those positions, LSU's in especially good hands, just from what we've seen out of them, and winning some, highly contested recruiting battles, especially, pulling a JV and Toviano. We mentioned Jaylen Brown, Kyle Parker. You mentioned Brad Davis and what he did with DJ Chester and holding off Auburn, beating out Michigan for Paul Mabenga, guys like that, that are national. Those are position coaches that I feel like are trending up in regards to being, top recruiters in the SEC. They've shown it last year. You want to see that continue. And so overall, though, I agree with you. I think the secondary is a group that is poised to really see another influx of talent.
You want to know right now, we get a look at the whole board, what the coaches have done. And then we could even put odds on everyone of like, what's the odds on favorite to finish as the best position haul of the group. It would be the best value buy of every group right now.
Tight end.
Oh, maybe D-line. If they go out and hire a D-line coach that suddenly just brings in like 2 or 3 like high level dudes that he was already recruiting somewhere else, if he is a college coach, like that could sway it. Right now, they don't even have a D-line coach. You lose Charles, not that you had Charleston Collins, but a guy comes off the board probably to Arkansas here soon. You got a big 5-star in-state. You've been hosting a lot of D-linemen. I don't know. I feel like that's one right now that we're not paying attention to, but boy, if the hire's right, they can make a splash there.
Yeah. And I think when you're looking at futures, that's a great point, but also, and this was discussed in the Charleston Collins thread on our board, there is like concern because you see a guy like Charleston Collins come off the board and you don't have a defensive line coach and things like that. But you also don't know who your defensive line coach is going to be, at least us publicly, if Brian Kelly does have his guy. If it's a splash hire, if it's a really good assistant coach, doesn't matter. He's been recruiting guys that are highly touted. He's been in on top, recruits. That's what matters. And it's true, that those position coaches are really, for the most part, the ones that their reputation, precedes themselves. And if they knock this hire out of the park, there's going to be a lot of people that, probably should have just taken a big, deep breath about this hire. But we don't know. And we'll kind of assess it once the hire comes. That's why we get paid a little bit of money to do this, is, share with you guys when this hire is made. All right, here's some of the top guys he was after. Here's the odds that they could get in on so-and-so or X recruit, and start assembling some official visits and getting guys on campus.
And Brian Kelly made it clear I had asked him the question about the D-line coach and sort of what are you weighing when you look at it? He said someone with experience recruiting in the SEC, experience developing in the SEC, and has put guys in the league. Like, you've eliminated a lot of applicants already because that takes experience and, skins on the wall. And Kelly even said that, okay, you've recruited guys. How did you develop them? And then where are they now in the NFL? And I just got the sense that he had a good feeling that they were going to be making a big hire at the position once spring ball got done. And look, by wrapping this up, I'll back up what you said and what we've been saying in that thread. In April, 10 months from signing day, or I guess like 7 months, 8 months from December, any D-line, any position hire and the time it takes to do that, if it's a month, outweighs any one recruit and what he wants to do in that span of time. And if they can get out of the month and a half or month plus without a D-line coach and only Charleston Collins comes off the board, I'm good with that. And I know you're thinking, well, they lost track, momentum with all these other guys. Well, you've got everyone else on staff still talking to them and recruiting them and telling them, hey, look, Brian Kelly says, look, we've got a D-line coach hire coming. Have some patience. You'll meet him. You'll get to know him. So yes, you lose that Jamar Cain year plus of recruiting guys, but you hope you can get a spark out of it. And if it is a college guy, that he comes with some guys that he's been recruiting, which was what Jamar Cain did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw that Jackson Howard, Deshaun Womack, guys like that. I'll note that Dominic McKinley was on campus, no D-line coach hired. Terrence Hibbler, a guy who, I think LSU is going to get an official visit from, potentially. He's out of Mississippi. Obviously, he's going to be a tough land coming from Mississippi, but he's a guy that told me straight up, he said, look, LSU is still very much involved. I talk to those guys all the time. So people are picking up the slack. We'll continue to wait it out and see. who LSU brings in as that defensive line coach, and we'll be here to react to it. So subscribe to the Bengal Tiger YouTube channel as well as the BengalTiger.com. Get your free Founders Club hat and look for that spring game special to subscribe. Get yourself a deal to jump on board the Bengal Tiger for the rest of the summer. So with that, for Shea Dixon, I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Bengal Tiger Podcast. We'll catch you next time. This was kind of recruiting heavy, but we're going to do it again later this week as another round of recruits will hit campus for the spring game. So catch us then. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.